Once Upon a Time in Hollywood perfectly encapsulates Quentin Tarantino's priorities, because while Django Unchained is exceptionally violent, the violence against the Manson family in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is so excessive. It kind of proves that Quentin Tarantino is more upset about the death of Hollywood than he was about slavery.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Ranking Spankings, our tier list series where we take something from pop culture and just find out what's the best, what's worst, and what's in the middle. And that's how tier lists work.
Correct.
Yeah, basically.
Do I get points for that?
You probably do. We're going to do a point system here, and Drew, you are winning. Liam, you are losing. And that's probably a good way to introduce everyone. My name is Tom. Drew is the winner with the big hair.
That's correct.
Liam is the man with the face hair.
I am the perpetual loser. I'm the world victim.
Can you, Liam, could you shave your beard and put it on top so you more resemble me?
Well, like a chia pet.
I could actually. Well, I maintain that I just look like the two of you, but with my head turned upside down.
Yes. You also look like another man with your head turned upside down. I've seen photos where you, like an egg-like Jim Henson. It's brilliant.
I'll take that. That's the best compliment I've ever received.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, it's better than saying if Jim Henson was alive today, because then he'd be, what, like 100? So, yeah.
A little bit moldy. Anyway,
speaking of moldy Jim Henson, we're talking about Tarantino movies today. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to look at the man, the foot sniffer himself, and find out which of his films are the best, which are the worst, and which ones are just okay. I think it's fair to say, well, the foot sniffer. It's the internet. I can say what I want.
Oh no, that's not the case.
And we will deserve it.
We have an article on our website called Christopher Nolan Wants to Kill His Wife, and it was a very deep expose by our Drew on this call right here. I think everything else is small fry in comparison.
I'll have you know that the correct enunciation and punctuation of that is Christopher Nolan wants to kill his wife. is actually how it is. That isn't a statement. That is a bewildered query out to the world.
Okay, then really. I will correct myself. Foot sniffer.
I can't get sued for asking questions. Yes, there we go. Foot sniffer Tarantino.
That could be like the clickbait thumbnail of this video. It's just like us doing this.
Yeah.
And then Quentin Tarantino's head from the bottom.
Oh no, I was just going to Photoshop our faces onto each toe. That would be even more disturbing. Jesus Christ! So we're all fans of his movies. Say what you will about the man, his movies. More often than not, I think it's fair to say we're all fans of his work. I think it's fair to say it's also when we talk about these in relation to the tier list, we are only ranking them within the realm of Tarantino films. If we were going to compare them against sort of cinema as a whole, we'd probably all rank them, more often than the A and the S tier and everything like that. But we got to be discerning when we're talking about Tarantino films in the context of themselves. So just to give you a little bit of overview, our ranking, as you can see on the screen right now, except for the other two people on this call, because only I may see my screen, is Tarantino for the lowest tier, so that would be where we would be putting the dredges. Then C, B, and A are all very very self-explanatory, and then very good is our traditional top tier. So we will see what will end up in there, but we'll be running through them in chronological order. And I think we're ready to start, unless you guys have got anything else you want to add before we get going.
One quick point is that Drew and I were talking about the recording process of this video yesterday, and we posited our own new title for the top tier, which is yeah.
Just because. Right?
On air notes, I'm going to do that now.
Years.
Okay, so a late-breaking change to production schedule. Tarantino, CB&A, and oh yeah. So
yeah, cream of the crap.
There we go. I'm gonna have to Photoshop a little picture of Macho Man in the top tier. So we're getting
That's
so
film, brother. All right, go on.
We've been Bonesaw. We've been talking about so many things that are not Tarantino. Let's start with Reservoir Dogs, which I believe dropped in 1992. Have I got that right? I'm rubbish with years.
Yeah, that was 92.
Yeah, of course. So this is the one that sort of kickstarted his career. Basically, I'm not going to go too much into this plot. It's one of the most popular films of all time. Bank heist goes wrong, and then we deal with the aftermath afterwards. It stars some legendary actors, some up and comers who became legendary actors. You got Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Tarantino himself, Michael Madsen as one of the most sadistic bastards in cinema history. And what do you guys think about Reservoir Dogs?
You can see why it kickstarted his career. It's an instant classic, and it's so hot out the gate. But that is probably because it's a complete rip-off of a Japanese film called Cities of Fire.
Oh, is it? I had no idea about this.
From 1989 or something, 87. Sorry. It's. I had brought the tab open because I wanted to get my facts straight. But yeah, it's like a direct influence right down to slow motion suit walking, bow, 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 bow moment. It's such a direct rip-off, but that's his whole deal, right? Tarantino he's a cuckoo of a writer. He picks up the things most interesting and most useful to his style, and he recreates them for an American audience.
Not only that, but that's a lot time-honored American tradition, is taking a really, really good Japanese film, sticking it in America, and winning lots of Oscars. So you've got the Seven Samurai.
I was going to say.
Seven. You've got
Christ in a Hidden Kingdom.
You've got that one film that is actually Star Wars.
That's
for some
Hidden
reason.
Kingdom.
That's the one. Yeah,
that's the Kurosawa one. Yep. Yeah. And is it Kimber the White Lion, who is the Lion King almost shot for shot? But I mean, the more you think about it, the more Tarantino is a little bit of a weeb, because even with Kill Bill, that is like a old, that's like an old 60s Japanese club song that was lost to obscurity, and he just is so obsessed with Japanese culture that he just dug it out and decided to put it in one of his most successful films.
Something he hasn't touched in a while, actually. I only really think of all of this Japanese stuff in maybe the first sort of 4 or 5 of his films, and then he started becoming a little bit more of a fan of Westerns. But I feel like Reservoir Dogs is one of those movies where I'm constantly not sure how good it is, and I change every few years I'll sort of re-examine it as a different person and look at it in a different light and be like, is this still good? Is it still sort of stand up today? And honestly, there
are moments of contagion in it where even if you go in the most cynically minded, there's inevitably a point where it's like, oh, these guys are badasses. And, there are whole moments of I want to be a guy with a cool suit and sunglasses. And then it obviously adds to a level of pathos when everything goes tits up. Seeing your heroes being felled before you. It's like a very mythic thing. I feel like such an arse end describing anything Tarantino has done as mythic.
Oh my god!
Oh, he's stroking some feet somewhere, so happy.
I recall in Ovid's tales, people's bare feet would be. He's a hero.
My favorite bit of the Iliad is where a tiny Japanese woman with a fucking mace comes out.
Achilles, wiggle your big toe. God. Your heel's not so bad. It's all right.
Nice.
Good. So anyway, Reservoir Dogs is my favorite Tarantino movie. So
absolute favorite. So you want to? Oh yeah, brother.
I personally would put it in but I am open to democracy as much as it has let me down many times before. So why do you think perhaps it doesn't belong in oh yeah?
I take it down one peg, and that's only because. And this is a trait that Tarantino always have. It's just, it turns up a bit more in Reservoir Dogs. He's writing dialogue that he thinks sounds cool. And so everybody thinks that and I know it plays into the characters that they're playing, where they're supposed to be tough or professionals or cool and everything. The minute everything goes tits up, they just fall apart at the seams and start messing with each other and killing each other and turn on each other. So in a sense, all of their I'm so cool, I'm saying all of this and that and everything like that, it just seems a little bit too juvenile to me in Reservoir Dogs, and so I can't take them as seriously as I might do somehow. All of that is forgotten when you get the Mr. Orange flashback, and you're just like, okay, story's good, this is it. But the dialogue, at least in the first half, really just cringes for me a little bit.
I think juvenile is the exact word I describe a lot of Tarantino's films. A lot of his directing style does feel like a kid with two action figures smashing them together. Like, I'm not saying that is because that's really fun. Like, that is a really fun way to play. Like, and that feels like a lot of what he's doing. I think Reservoir, I do fully agree that occasionally the dialogue does teeter on a bit cringeworthy.
It's definitely it's a film of style over substance for sure, which you could say about a lot of his films, some more so than others. The reason it appeals to me so much is the minimalism of it. That it is very much. Effectively, like some of his later films, it could have been a play or just theatre, and it would have worked just as well. And I do like that about it. But I do agree that he is effectively writing cartoon characters on a gritty, realistic backdrop. So yeah, I can absolutely see that. Would anyone be adverse to it sitting in A tier then?
A tier sounds perfect.
I think it's a split A.
I will drop it in A. Cool.
You've added us to a hit list, haven't you, for not putting it in? Oh yeah.
Oh, there will be other films that I will also be vehemently advocating for. Oh yeah, as my voice decides to fail me. But we'll get to that point later. For now, we jump forward. I want to say 2 years. Again, I have no dates in front of me, to 1994's Pulp Fiction. Whereas you can, summarize the plot of Reservoir Dogs in about 2 sentences, Pulp Fiction is all over the place in terms of what's going on. You need to have a good old Wikipedia synopsis to really grasp. But Drew, do you want to give us sort of the spark notes?
The spark notes is the interweaving stories of everybody involved in some way of this gang, where you've got a couple of hitmen trying to get a case. You've got the boss's wife who has to go on a night out in the town with one of the hitmen. You've got a boxer on the payroll who's throwing fights and everything. And hijinks ensue is the best way to describe it from there. I mean,
of the film, like
hijinks ensues.
Yeah.
It's very, very impressive how these disparate stories all end up weaving into the same connected universe, and it works for as many moving parts as there is. Nothing feels underbaked, in my opinion. It all feels fully fleshed out, and in a time when not to say that I'm a huge fan of the Marvel films, but it took 22 films to get a meaningful payoff. Pulp Fiction manages to do it in 2.5 hours, which is mighty impressive.
I think this is a perfect film, as much as I think I could say. I don't know that I can say that there's any downside. I will say that only by comparison, Bruce Willis's whole sequence is somewhat less original and thrilling. Yeah, that dynamic would be a word. Unexpected or anything like that. Up until the point where the GIMP comes out, that's like that everything up until then plays fairly straight for a Tarantino film. And after the sort of larger than life characters and crazy scenarios that they'll get themselves into, it takes a really long time for Bruce Willis's one to really get going. And you think maybe with the runtime of Pulp Fiction that could have been trimmed down somewhat or something. I don't know, but I'm very much reaching for something to dislike about the film, because overall I don't think there's many films I would want to rewatch over and over and over again for the immersive feeling of Pulp Fiction. That's just
I would go as far as to say it was the last film that Bruce Willis actually enjoyed being in.
Wait, the last one he tried.
When did Die Hard 3 come out? I swear that was a little bit later, and that's pretty good.
That was like maybe 2000.
No, it was definitely the 90s because it has
You're
it
right.
has Samuel L. Jackson with hair. When did he lose all
Yeah.
his hair? But
Either way,
Oh my god, that's weird.
but speaking of the Bruce Willis section, you do get to see his penis though, which is a mark in its favor. So
you get to see his, and like what's great about Bruce Willis in that film is he does have the body and indeed the hog of a retired boxer.
That's method acting right.
He's got a method penis.
Decent amount of muscle, little bit of slob, big old dirty looking wang. Like he's got the full gamut of the retired boxer.
Oh,
it's
good
the dick
Lord.
that makes the sound there. That's the dick.
You talking to me? I don't see any other cock here. You must be talking to me. Anyway, and also his girlfriend wants to have a pot belly for some reason. So there you go.
People have interpreted that as her desire for her to be pregnant, or rather an interpretation of it that she's dreaming of a big belly.
Okay, she could have just said that, but whatever.
Tarantino.
Some authors use subtext, and I'll tell you what, they're all cowards.
They're all cowards.
Yeah, that is a problem in general with Tarantino. He writes people as if they're all as crazy as he is. All of his characters say the most unhinged shit. It's like, yeah, I would like to have a pot belly. No one talks. Quentin, come on, talk to a woman for like 5 minutes.
What is it she says?
Don't just look at her feet.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that what we find pleasing to the touch is not the same as what we find pleasing to the eye. Shut up! What's going on?
Quentin, pack it in.
That's why I think that section drags a little bit, is that they are adorable, those two, but I find them a little less sufferable than some of the others. For instance, I could listen to Vincent Jules talk nonsense all day, partly because they've got just such well-defined characters, just in the way that they speak and act and hold themselves in this kind of regard, and also just the nonsense that they'll talk for minutes and minutes on end about absolutely nothing. And I feel like that's where his quote-unquote sort of naturalistic dialogue that everybody started to praise and imitate, where it was just, as long as you have characters that are characters, it doesn't matter what they're talking about. If anything, the better that they're talking about something completely random, like Madonna or anything like that, then that makes them seem more like real people, because real people talk about pop culture and things like that.
Royale with cheese.
The Royale with cheese. I've given a million ladies a million foot massages, and like, but that, it isn't realistic. It's like heightened realistic, and to be honest, that's why I really like Pulp Fiction and a couple of his later ones, is that they are relatively, or nothing particularly fantastical happens. None of it is real. It's just a bit of heightened cinema experience kind of.
There's always been this talk of, there's some, I don't know if it's headcanon or if there's been any illusion that it's true that everything within the Tarantino universe is within a shared universe, and it all goes back to, I think, don't they say that in Inglourious Bastards, when they kill Hitler, that sort of is the divergence in timeline or something, and that everything that happens in the Tarantino verse is from that, which I kind of like as a thing. I'm glad that they haven't forced it too hard. I know one of the things they were talking about is that Vince Vega and is it Vic Vega from Reservoir Dogs? There was talk of doing a joint film with those two in like a shared universe. Do you think that would have been good? Do you wish that would have happened? Or are you kind of glad that never existed?
I would argue that the whole thing of like the headcanon of the shared universe and like the discussions about shared universes actually kind of is the wood for the trees. What we're looking at here is not a shared canonical universe where X leads to Y leads to Z. What we're looking at is the worldview of Quentin Tarantino as reflected in his films. He is the most author I can think of. Himself in his text more than any other fucker, which is like why his character in this film, I'm almost certain, is just him looking for an excuse to say the N-word a bunch. He has written himself into this text, and he does it all the fucking time. And I think that this idea of the shared universe fails to acknowledge the fact that this is just how he sees the world. That interview he did where someone was like, "Why are your films so violent?" And he goes, "Because it's so fun, Jan." And it's like, that's true. That's how he sees this world, and that's why it's like.
And that's
the actual theory you cited argues that when Hitler was blown up in a cinema, the American consciousness picked up on hyperviolence and the birth of the American empire in basically the one go in a cinema. So cinema became hyperviolent, society became hyperviolent. The world is just very aggressive. And I think that is just how Tarantino chooses to interpret real world events.
I think he rather laments that things go down quite more boringly in real life than they would if he imagined somebody who would have just picked up a samurai sword and gone after Chairman Mao, something like that. I imagine I really want Tarantino to make a Cold War film where it gets much hotter and somebody just jumps into Russia, kicks Stalin's ass or something like that. And that's how he probably fantasizes about the way those things go down. Is that he's like, why didn't you just blow them up?
He's not the most tactful man.
Yeah. And then, so like in a way, I guess Inglourious Basterds is the convergence of all of Tarantino's ideas into one central thing, rewriting history to be more concise and clear cut than the muddy waters that it is. Lots of ultra violence and then movies as an obsession.
It's no wonder he loves Eli Roth so much, because they are kind of just one and the same. They both just love hyper stylized, hyper violent. This is our version of everything amped up in the real world. And then we get something like Hostel, which is fine, but then we get Hostel 2, which is and then we get Hostel 3, which needs to get in Tarantino.
I think it was a Dan Avidan quote, or somebody was talking about his music tastes, Dan Avidan, Game Grumps and Ninja Sex Party. And he said he was making some music recommendations. No, it was a comedy channel. And he got a comment from somebody and he was like, "I love you, but I hate everything you love." And I feel like that applies so much to Tarantino, where I'm like, how do you love all of this and you produce such quality content? And it's because in their essence, they're the same. It's just the dressing, the costumes that they wrap around it. And what they're interested in is just crazy ultra violence and feet.
Tarantino is the sort of man I would both love and hate to go for a beer with, because he probably wouldn't even order a beer. He'd order some very, very obscure, weird thing, or a Diet Coke. It will be one of the two. It won't be anything in between.
So here's my only critique of Pulp Fiction, and that's its fan base.
Drew?
I mean the most dedicated. Fight me. The most dedicated. Pulp
Go
Fiction,
on.
And you will win because I have eaten. But the most vehement Pulp Fiction fans miss why Pulp Fiction is good, because they're always like, "Oh, it's just like so like cool and like so surreal and like so many like it's so stylistically interesting." It's like, yeah, cool, but the style actually says a lot about the story. This world is interconnected, and that in itself is quite interesting. It's not just that it's like, oh, it's really slick, and also Samuel Jackson says "motherfucker" a lot, and he has a wallet. Like, I think that's my only critique. That's what my only critique of like most things I enjoy. Like, turns out I'm the only person who can actually enjoy things the right way. Who'd have thunk it?
Everyone else is wrong.
You're all watching these wrong. I know you saw the same movie as me, but still. Well, you can. I really, really love any filmmaker that can mess with normal chronology and still make a movie that is digestible and easily understandable on the first viewing. Like, I'm not talking like Cloud Atlas level of just, you need to watch this like 3 times to get it, and we don't care. Like, this is beyond your imagining, mortal, with the Wachowskis. It's more along the lines of someone like Denis Villeneuve in Arrival or something like that, where you will turn everything that you thought you knew about the chronology of events on their head and place you in a different moment in time, and you still know where you are. You recontextualize events with different emotions based on your reorganizing of things in your head. And the way that Pulp Fiction jumps around in time through different places, killing off characters only to go back in time to show you how they ended up in the situation you saw them in an hour early in the film, and then the neat little touches like opening and ending on the diner and from different perspectives. I think that's like an easy to do, hard to master skill, like where you can ape that very, very easily and just be like, tell a story out of order, but to tell a story out of order that actually enhances its impact. Because if you told it chronologically, people have done that where they've reordered Pulp Fiction chronologically, and it's terrible. It's not great at all. It's boring in the worst places. It's very, very strange to watch.
You lose context for the things that you've already witnessed. So, like, you see a natural progression, which is not as interesting as wondering how a person got to where they are. Yeah. Like, in a chronological viewing, you get less of a sense of the characters because you've now seen all these characters at their worst and then eventually at their best. You get like the full scale of them. Whereas if it's in a chronological kind of thing, you just see a progression of someone having a really crap day.
Yeah, you see a lot of I've forgotten his name. John Travolta taking a shit and ending up in worse situations every time, eventually to his doom. It's just the story of Vincent Vega's poorly timed bowel movements and how those impact his life.
So you make it sound pretty good like that.
Yeah. That's the face-off I wanted to see.
Not to spend too much more time on Pulp Fiction, but just another little sidebar. While you guys have been chatting, I've been on IMDb just to, mainly to get the years right and everything. And the first photo on the image tab of Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill Volume 1, Death Proof, and I think one more. The first image is a feet pic. So someone has either organized them in such a way that is the primary photo, or the search traffic on all of them as that one is the most dominant photo. So
it's about WikiFeet. It's a website that.
Yep.
Of course, Drew knows this.
Yeah, no, they rate them. You'll like rank people's celebrities' feet.
It's like a 5-star rating. It's not dissimilar to our tier system. So like the hottest feet get the yeah. And then, it is a remarkable example of the archival spirit as filtered through the world's most sinister people.
I mean,
I'm absolutely fucking fine with King, but I will say, cataloguing people as per their appendages does strike a little bit Ed Gein to me.
It does. At least with things like ratemypoo.com, you are the ones uploading it, so you have autonomy over what's being rated and what's being presented.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, I think that no information is too minute to be recorded and assessed and they get ascribed historical value. Because when the bombs drop and then they rediscover our civilization, you don't want a blank space in human history but how did they value their feet? Like how did they rank their feet? What were the traits of good feet? And unless you have some hero who's going to be that historian, who's going to document the values of our civilization, I think, yeah, that's very valuable. I don't look down on people who extensively categorize different species of butterfly. What good does that do for the world? Ranking in people's feet for posterity, and also just generally to satisfy our encyclopedic drive as a species. I'm a fan of that. I love extensive Wikipedias. I will spend literal days on Wikipedia looking up, Quagwheel Forsyth, the fucking one pod racer who was in one background shot. I'll do that all day, and I think feet is equally as valuable as all that.
True. I really hope you know that in the edit of this, I'm going to put Land of Hope and Glory under that entire rant.
With Quadranero's face over the top of...
Yeah, every Wikipedia is the modern Herodotus. Just recording humanity's greatest moment and also its toes.
Yes.
And
God damn it, I think that is valuable.
we have been recording for nearly 50 minutes, so we're on the second film. Can we put Pulp Fiction in? Oh yeah, and be done with it.
Yeah, let's be done.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think it's good to know that Jackie Brown is probably going to have a lot less discourse because I don't remember much about it. Liam has never seen it. Drew, tell us what Jackie Brown's all about.
Jackie Brown. Let me talk about Jackie Brown. All right. I hope you're here for another 50 minutes while Drew recites the plot and many of the good lines of Jackie Brown and then does a cross comparison to its original novel, Rum Punch.
It's too hot today.
Oh, God. It really is heating up in here. I don't know if I'm just antsy about the feet and I'm getting a little hot. It's just really warm now. Oh, sorry. I think about those toes. Oh, my God. Jackie Brown is the story of a airline host. What do you call those nowadays? Air hostess?
Attendant?
Airline attendants?
Me mum's always called them trolley dollies.
Sky Maid.
Sky wenches. Sky wench. There we go.
There we go.
Jackie Brown, played by the incomparable Pam Grier, is a sky wench, and she on the side smuggles drugs for Ordell, a sort of like small time but thinks he's big time gun runner, and she gets arrested because people are trying to track down on Ordell, and she sparks up a romance and a scheme to walk away with lots of money and also take down everybody and not get into prison with a bail bondsman. And once again, hijinks ensue. It's good. That's the plot of Jackie Brown.
Why did you like it so much?
Why do I like it so much? It is, one would never describe Tarantino's pieces as thoughtful. Or even momentarily contemplative. We just like lambasted his stuff like Potbelly, like musings, and you know, Bruce Willis's dick is the most we came away with in terms of philosophical thought.
But I'm not wrong.
You are correct.
All laugh at Millsy, but I'm not wrong here.
It has to be said though that while yes, Reservoir Dogs was a remake and everything like that, Jackie Brown happens to be based off of a book, a very, very good book by Elmore Leonard, who keeps having loads of stuff adapted into very, very good TV shows and movies like Justified. But a lot of what makes it into the movie Jackie Brown is laid in foundations by Elmore Leonard, and you'd have to be an idiot to mess that up. That being said, it actually elevates it by she's not black in the original text, and it's not a very sort of blaxploitation flick like Jackie Brown is, which is like a sort of thematic ripoff of Foxy Brown with Pam Grier about sort of 10, 15 years earlier, the 70s or 20 years, sorry. And there are actual moments where you start to think that maybe he kind of matured a little bit or had some thoughts, because everybody's having genuine, real human conversations about things like getting older or what it's like being a black woman in America, or, you know, doing this and that. And I can't think of any other Tarantino movie where a person sits down and thinks about, you know, a relatable human experience. They're always beyond reality, and this one is so very grounded in ordinary people that I was like, oh, okay, fair enough, but I'll give you points for that. You had a mature adult conversation in your movie where nothing exploded and no one stabbed anybody.
The misanthropic tendencies in my brain are asking, do you think the reason that Jackie Brown is perhaps the least talked about of his films is the fact that he took a more reserved and thoughtful and nuanced approach, and that just didn't resonate with Joe Public?
It was also that I think there's nothing flashy in it. There is no heist. There is nothing. I think one gun is fired at the end of the movie, and it makes total sense that no guns were fired beforehand. It's all about making plays. It's closer to a heist film in that nothing really happens until they show you what actually happened behind the scenes at the end. Very, very much a heist movie in its style. But also that it's a blaxploitation movie about 20 years after blaxploitation movies stopped being exciting and profitable. It's much like Tarantino always does. He looks back to what he perceives as golden eras of Hollywood, and everybody was quite willing to put blaxploitation in the past. That's why the latest Shaft movie bombed like a fucking ton, like dropped like a brick. And I think that its style and its tone, which are homages, don't resonate with a mid to late 90s audience at that point. They were ready for surf rider shit like Pulp Fiction. Yeah, I think it was just wrong time, wrong audience.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, this is really hard to rank because as I say, I don't really know too much. So basically, we're going off Drew's enthusiasm for this film.
I have a point. So this has been sent in by Jim, one of our other content creators here at Upside Down Shark. I texted them earlier today asking if they had any hot takes about Tarantino, because sweet God, they've got takes on everything else. And their response was, Jackie Brown isn't overly stylized in terms of structure, which means that it doesn't get talked about nearly enough, but it's dripping with aesthetic style as a really sincere blaxploitation love letter. Also, Pam Grier 100% deserves all the love and praise for her performance in it.
I'm straight, 100%. The final shot of Jackie Brown, like, it's hard not to feel moved. I'd say higher than the feeling of what's his face, Samuel L. Jackson's final monologue in Pulp Fiction leaves you with a bit of a chill. Pam Grier's is on an entirely different level, but her acting is just incredible. Like, no dialogue, just facial expression, leaves you with a kind of resounding sense of like empathy at the end of the film. That's hard to do. She should, yeah, get all of the praise and everything. It's people are drawn to like Samuel L. Jackson in the film, obviously, with the when you absolutely positively got to kill every motherfucker in the room, except no substitutes. You know, he says the Sam Jackson type lines, but what gets you staying is the surprisingly nuanced performances.
So where would you put it in the context of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs? Do you think it's better than either of them? Would you put it below them? Where do you think it belongs?
I'm as a victim of style as anybody, so I can't put it higher than them. I do enjoy those other two far more than Jackie Brown. All my intellectual bullshit about why it's amazing still doesn't overcome the fact that I want to see bad motherfuckers doing bad things. You know? Like, that's all I want to see. And some of these later films are going to get bumped way higher, and all I'm going to be able to say about them is he killed people in a cool way, and that's going to be like the only praise I can give them. So Jackie Brown, I would give a B.
Fair enough.
The highest I think I would be willing to go for it.
Well, as always, we can always move stuff around later on, but we'll put it in B for now. And I will definitely be rewatching that, because I think perhaps I was maybe not mature enough to enjoy it for what it really is at the time, and I was just like, as you say, it didn't have that immediacy to it. The others do, so maybe that's why it didn't resonate. But I definitely want to look at it with fresh eyes and with your enthusiasm. But back to flashy bullshit. Let's go to Kill Bill.
Kill
Bill. You don't get flashy.
I can't think of more polar opposite films than Kill Bill and Jackie Brown.
Yeah. Well, part one specifically we'll talk about first. 2003 with Kill Bill. Liam, why don't you tell us what happens in Kill Bill?
Scorned woman becomes Ronin. That's all you need to know. That's the entire plot. A woman is wronged by her criminal husband, I suppose. I think they're married. And in response to that, she becomes a warrant samurai rolling across America, taking out a bunch of hitmen with a fucking katana. It is, when I was describing earlier about the Tarantino tendency of taking his action figures and making them fight, this is that film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every character in this film is the most explosive, bombastic, stylized form of themselves, and they've all got swords, and they duke it out all the time. It is a live action anime of a film, and it is a
100%.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. In my opinion, the better of the two parts as well. Yeah. You've kind of summarized my thoughts on it entirely. It is just a load of bombastic fun, never takes itself too seriously, dripping with style. I would probably give it A, to be honest.
I'd probably put it well. I think it is the perfect getting drunk with your mates film.
Oh yeah.
Like get a couple beers in, everyone gets a bit trashed, you can kind of talk amongst yourselves in the quiet bits, and you can then like watch rapturously as Uma Thurman rips people apart with a sword, And yeah, it's a dumb little flick, and it's a delight to watch.
Yeah.
Drew, you got anything to add?
I cannot add more than that. The movie never tries to say anything more than that, so why should we bother trying to look in more than that? It yeah. You know, people always say stuff like, "Oh, it knows what it is. It's just an action flick like John Wick style or something like that." The important thing to take away from there is that they're just consistent, and it's like, you know, you're coming here to watch her slice off limbs and blood spurt everywhere, and cool characters to have cool weapons and fight in cool locations, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. And he does it well. That's an A. Yeah, I think it's an A.
Yeah, I personally would put it below Reservoir Dogs, but do you guys disagree with that?
I'd put it below because the acting, let's say, is less, like they do more with less in Reservoir Dogs. They have to extend themselves a bit further using dialogue and motion and establish character a little easier than this one wears yellow and this one wears a schoolgirl outfit or something like that. They don't have character more than there, whereas the Reservoir Dogs people have a little bit more effort that goes into it.
Yeah, they don't need to show their colors. They just have it as their name. And that's
that's right.
It is trying to make a distinction between like Westworld and Power Rangers. They are big stories that are Kill Bill is Power Rangers. Like the only real distinction is that instead of like a gigantic monster tearing up nondescript American city, it is Bill. Like, that's the
now all I want is a version of Westworld where instead of going to, you know, cowboy setting, you just get to go into like a Megazord, and that's just your vacation, is that you get to go around just beating up plasticine monsters. But,
I've recently finished Titanfall 2's story campaign, and let me tell you, it's that.
Yes.
I still need to play that.
I won the Titanfall 2 story campaign. Is the best campaign I've played in recent memory. That was so fantastic. I was thinking, though, what would be better is Power Rangers, and one of their villains is just David Carradine.
But the twist is at the end is that he kills himself through autoerotic asphyxiation.
Exactly. You've got like Rita Repulsa there, and she's like, nah, Krispy Kremes and all of that, and it's just David Carradine lounging on a couch, like, hey, how's it going? What are we doing here?
We're gonna party,
have a bit of fun.
I just want to hear one grizzled cowboy say kawaii.
Kawaii.
Does like a little chew of a cigar and he's like, kawaii.
Konnichiwa.
Desu senpai.
Where are my otakus at, eh? Anyway, moving on.
No name.
Kill Bill Volume 2. First of all, how do you guys feel about the volumization of these two films? Do you think they would have worked better as one piece, or do you like them One Piece anime, or would they have worked better as they are as Volume 1 and Volume 2?
I think serialization actually does work in this because Part 2 is ostensibly an escalation of tone, right? The first one is bombastic, and I think the reason Kill Bill 2 doesn't quite work as well is because it is occasionally a bit too bombastic. It is occasionally a bit too silly, but that's a sequel. It's an escalation, so I think that actually does make sense in context of the story.
I think they did something that happens with like sequels or genres as a whole, where they mythologize them, and things take on much more, they become more profound than they really have any right, or they're trying to be profound about something that wasn't meant to be profound just because it's got heritage, it's got a first film, something like Star Wars, where they'll hold in sort of like high sort of reverence and mysticism, something that was very prosaic in the first time, and then in Kill Bill 1 it's just kill/hack everything, it's all fun. In Kill Bill 2 they've got this kind of like reverence for their relationships and their character, and they'll languidly sort of like stay on things for a very, very long time, like a training montage or the final conversation with Bill and all that kind of stuff. That goes on for such a long time because it's banking on your investment on it, and I think it takes it for granted a bit. Yeah.
So I still really enjoy Kill Bill Volume 2. I mean, if you like Volume 1, you're gonna like Volume 2. They are very similar, but I agree. I think it does, you know, it relies too much on your investment in the first one, so it just doesn't stand quite as well on its own.
I used to prefer Volume 2.
Interesting.
I look more, and still do nowadays, into... I was less interested in the visual storytelling of movies than I was about the actual written dialogue, coming at it mostly from reading books and then looking to films and listening for the words they were saying rather than the visual language that they were conveying. I much preferred Kill Bill Volume 2 because it had a lot more layered nuance. It had conversations in the first place. Let's be honest, Kill Bill Volume 1, they don't talk all that much. They kind of just get down to business. Kill Bill Volume 2, they talk an awful lot. And I used to appreciate that a bit more because that told me more about the world that I was in than the visuals did. But now looking back at it, thematically, 1 is just so much more consistent and well-contained, whereas 2 seems to veer rapidly between crazy bombastic stuff to long, slow, contemplative stuff. And it ebbs and flows just a bit too inconsistently.
Tonally, it is a roller coaster of a film. It goes into a lot of places over the course of not that long of a film either, especially for Tarantino. Yeah, it's a bit all over the shop.
I think they could have been one film. Like the fact that people sat through the Snyder Cut or the Lord of the Rings extended edition or something like that, I will happily spend 4 hours watching a very, very, very good film. And if you cut down some of Volume 2's more wasteful segments and then put that all together into one thing, I think I'd happily take that as a single cut movie.
I think you've guaranteed us at least half a dozen dislikes by mentioning the Snyder Cut and Lord of the Rings in the same sentence.
Cut it out, bleep it. Just bleep it. They'll never know what I was talking about.
I'll just say that Drew said a really unpleasant slur.
Yeah.
That'll get some likes, probably.
What did I say? What?
He said a really horrible slur. Really gross.
It's Tarantino, so I probably just said the N-word.
Yeah, but you can. You've got the pass. But please don't.
I was about to just spew.
I'm taking you down with me, fuckers.
It's like, are you sure? Because I will. Don't unleash hell like this.
As I always say, the only N-word allowed on this channel is Nacho Grande.
What?
Do you always say that?
No, that's the first time I've ever said that.
I just wanted to check.
Can we say it more from now on, though? I think you've established something here.
It is canon now. It is law.
All right. Anyway, the Kill Bills. Where are we putting them?
I mean, Volume 2, I feel, has to go next to Volume 1, or do you think it's worse than Jackie Brown?
I'd go with B, personally.
Okay.
It's not terrible. It's also not his best by a long way. There are a lot of other films that are significantly better.
I mean, Drew, you will be the one to really judge this. Would you say it's better or worse than Jackie Brown?
What, Volume 1 or 2?
2.
It's worse, I think.
Okay. I can dig it.
It's a tough one. I'd say it's on par. I put it slightly below Jackie Brown in terms of my continued enjoyment for it. Jackie Brown ages like a fine wine, whereas Kill Bill Volume 2, I only go to sort of disregard more over time.
It's more like a sugar rush than a fine wine.
Indeed. Very, very good. Very good. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Anyway. Yes. Just slightly below Jackie Brown in B, I think is.
We will stick it there for now. Then we move forward to 2007's Death Proof. This was part of the project with Robert Rodriguez. I can't speak today. The Grindhouse. I wish I could roll my R's.
You very briefly turned Tarantino yourself there. There's maybe Robert Rodriguez.
Please never compare me to that man.
About dicks, okay? It's about dicks, okay?
Did you hear that? Apparently, Madonna actually wrote to him after that scene and said it's actually about love. It's not about dicks.
She gave him a copy of the album and said, "Listen to it."
You fucking weirdo! Stop talking.
Yeah, never contact me or my estate again. Let me just live with all my adopted children.
I think the better thing would have been to release an album entirely about dicks, from Madonna's perspective, which is kind of, I wouldn't put past modern Madonna. To just be like, here's a song about dicks.
Like a penis. Heart for the very first time.
That's a moment.
Like Willis's penis. Yeah.
No.
I've got your I've got your testes.
On my forehead? Anyway.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, Death Proof.
If you want it.
Drew, tell me what Death Proof is before you start singing more.
Sorry. What's Death Proof? Death Proof is fucking weird.
It's
Death
car
Proof is
crashes
about
and Kurt
a
Russell.
guy who kills people by inviting them in his car, or rather crashing them with his car that is death proof. It's got like roll cages and like bars and everything to protect whoever's in the driver's seat. And he likes to just kill women. Like, I don't really know how I can explain it anymore. He just likes to kill women, whether they're in his car or out his car or whatever. Just likes to drive them into them with his car. And it's like set across 2 separate time periods where he kills a bunch of other ones the first time, and then the second bunch sort of try and get their revenge. And it's another one, Tarantino ones, where it's obscenely star-studded in retrospect. Like there are too many incredibly like famous household names just kind of chilling out in a weird slasher film. I'm thinking of Rosario Dawson or Christina Hendricks, I think, is in it as well.
I'm just going through the people in it now. It's got Eli Roth's in it, of course he is.
Yep. The guy who played the short one in Inglourious Bastards there as well. Can't remember which one it was. Yudovich.
I can't remember his name, but yeah. I mean, to be honest, out of the 2 Grindhouse films, I think I prefer Planet Terror. But I mean, obviously, that's probably not fair in the conversation we're having right now. It's fine. It's one I've watched once, but have had no compulsion to watch again.
Well, what were you saying earlier, Liam, about it being just too perfect for what the recreation
it
it is?
Well, as a pastiche of a Grindhouse film, which means it's kind of shit. Grindhouse is an inherently corny genre that borrows a lot of really like the worst parts of slasher films, and it borrows the worst parts of exploitation movies, gore exploitation, and Death Proof does all of those brilliantly. And the unfortunate part is, if you do something shit brilliantly, you make something shit. So like, it's not. I think shit is definitely too hard a word. I do think that Death Proof is Tarantino's most indulgent film that he's that era.
I was gonna say,
yeah, I
humbly disagree. We will get to that point. Oh yeah, there's going to be a sticking point at the end, but
yeah, there really is.
I mean, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I love Kurt Russell. I always have a lot of time well, as an actor, not as a person so much, but yeah, I always have a lot of time for him in things. But I think even he doesn't elevate this too much.
They don't do much with him.
No.
He's at his best when he's dominating center stage, just growling lines at everybody, you know, being the full center of attention. But a lot of attention is taken away from him, the significant portions of it, introducing a myriad of characters, which is odd because Kurt Russell is, by that time, he was already Kurt Russell, you know, right? The Thing, Snake Plissken. Yeah. Like, you'd think you'd put him front and center a lot more, but he takes a while to show up and he doesn't stick around.
I mean, speaking of putting him front and center, I mean, I literally could not put him more front and center than this.
That is fantastic.
I might do the rest of this down here, but anyway, I'm thinking C tier, to be honest. Tarantino, maybe.
I'd say D. I don't enjoy it at all, really. Like, I can look at it and study it and I see what he did, but I don't like it because I never liked what he's copying in the first place. And so
fair enough. I think, yeah, Tarantino, I agree. I have no real compulsion to watch it again. It's not offensively bad, but it's not great. So I think in the context of Tarantino films, because his highs are so high, this has got to be a low. But luckily, I feel like we get back on track with, I think it even came out the year after, Inglourious Bastards.
Really? You wouldn't know visually. That's bad. That's insane.
Yeah, let me double check, because Death Proof, 2 years later, my bad. Inglourious Bastards came out in 2009. Yeah.
Like, if you're going to try and emulate a certain style, make sure that style doesn't suck, because the aesthetic does make that film look significantly older than it is.
Yeah. That's surprising.
Bastards.
It almost looks like his first independently funded art film before he's made Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. It's kind of interesting that way.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. But
But
Inglorious
no.
Bastards, Liam, tell me what happens.
Sweet Christ. Okay, so the Second World War wasn't violent enough for Quentin Tarantino, so he decided to put Brad Pitt in it. A kooky heist plot to kill Adolf Hitler ensues. There is a man called the Bear Jew whose entire thing is being the baddest motherfucker in a suite of already badass motherfuckers. Yes, Inglourious Bastard is a true and honest delight. It is a very, very, very fun film.
Yeah. Some people pointed out at the end of the movie where he says this might just be my masterpiece. A lot of people have said this might be the center point where the balance that Tarantino achieves between like his most indulgent but most endearing at the same time. Like there's no kind of like, oh, I'm so tired of the Tarantino and the nature of all of this. There's something, I couldn't pin a specific reason why it's there, but as a whole enjoyable piece on its own merits, like this is probably, I would say, like his best technically.
Wow.
In terms of technique, that opening scene is one of the most tense pieces.
Oh yeah.
The whole, you spend the entire thing with your arsehole like that. It is so deeply tense and unpleasant, and you're just waiting for everything to kick off. Like in Kill Bill, the dialogue always feels like it is a brief intermission between people pulling out their swords. In this, it feels like a brief intermission in between something truly horrendous happening. But you are waiting for it and waiting, and it is fucking horrible. And
that is true. Every single dialogue scene is so incredibly laden with tension. I'm thinking of the underground bar scene as well. That just mounts and mounts and mounts into it. Just you're ready to crack. You just can't wait for all of the guns to start firing, explosions to go off, because then it will just dispel your tension and you can get back to
comfortable than what you're currently saying.
Yeah, that's why it's such an ultimate release when everything goes explosions and tits up and guns firing, and you're just like, oh, thank God, this is so easy to digest. It's
sorry. Tarantino worked out what video games worked out a long time ago, which is you can do anything to Nazis. Anything. You can like all the tension that needs to be broken by this incredibly tense thriller can be broken by just going, right, so his name is Adolf Hitler. He's one of the worst people that's ever lived. Let's hit him with flamethrowers. Let's hit him with guns.
Rip his face to shreds with a big machine gun. Go for it. Why not?
Yeah, let's go Gears of War on this motherfucker. Like, you don't need sympathy for Nazis. Upside down shark motto, no sympathy for Nazis.
Absolutely.
I'll pat that. Yeah, I second that. Yeah.
100%. I think you have to give so much credit to Christoph Waltz, for particularly in that opening scene, for being so instrumental in ramping up the tension. I think it's no surprise that he was brought back for Django because he's so good. He's so good.
He is amazing. Yeah, definitely. Him and people like him and Daniel Bruhl, who can act in multiple languages within a same scene and convey just oodles of threatened emotion. Just that is singular. His performance.
It's that charismatic threat as well. He is so smarmy and so good at seeming nice, but with all of that sinister malevolence just boiling under the surface. It's just chef's kiss.
He is the Reich. He is the Reich personified. He is a character who has control and fully believes he deserves it. So again, like this thing of like you kind of don't necessarily mind when shit goes wrong for him because he fucking deserves it. Like he puts in such a bloody performance in that film.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, that is not. He does just about overshadow him, but in any other film, Brad Pitt's would have been quite legendary. I mean, he's not the. Hans Lander is a very nuanced and in some ways sort of like an interesting character. He had no such luck with Aldo Rain, played by Brad Pitt, who I reckon they had to stop filming several times because he just ate the scenery every single time. They're like, he fucking like a beaver took down the forest in that first scene when he was going around. That is he is incredible. I will watch his opening speech to the Jews multiple times just for the you will die trying.
He is my Captain America. The 1940s American war spirit more than anything.
Yeah.
He is a himbo. Like his entire thing is like he is dumb and pretty and morally virtuous. Like
put that on the posters. Your country needs you to scalp some Nazis. It would get me off to war. What can I say? Scalping Nazis.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad. Let's do it.
It's good to know that all we need to do to get Liam to conscript is to just find a very attractive, slightly stupid man and just get him to be, very charismatic.
I am a simple man with simple needs.
just get Ryan Gosling come to Liam's house personally and just be like, hey, I don't know much about what's going on, but your country needs you, I guess. Do you want to come? Come on, come to war. Come on.
What about this place called Afghanistan? Now.
I've heard of this place called
and I hear some shenanigans going down.
So Inglourious Bastards, we thinking, oh yeah.
I think it's an oh yeah.
I think it's below Pulp Fiction, but I think it's definitely oh yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. Then it is an oh yeah. Right. Then we jump forward another few years to 2012's Django Unchained.
Django.
So this, I think, was the first Tarantino film I ever saw in cinema because it was the first one I was old enough to see, or at least the first one I was old enough to fake my way to go and see. So Drew, hit us up with the synopsis.
Synopsis is the slave is freed, called Django, by a bounty hunting dentist, played by Christoph Waltz once again, and they go on many, many bounties, but eventually the overall plot is to rescue his slave wife, Brunhilde, from notoriously insane slave owner Calvin Candy, and they hatch a scheme to go and get her and free her. And that's about a synopsis I could think of.
Yeah, that sort of sums it up pretty nicely. Fantastic film. I really, really like this film. I think it isn't perfect, and it is very much, again, sort of style over substance, and there are a few questionable things that Tarantino, as you say, sort of his way of saying the N-word, and getting a pass for it.
He's not an especially sensitive person when it comes to race relations.
No. This is the most this is the most generous he's been in that it's actually black people saying the N-word this time.
Yeah.
Like
well, at least for the most part.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, like he I was about to say he didn't write himself in it to say the N-word, but he did. So
with a horrendous Australian accent.
Oh god, yeah. Why is he Australian? Like there was
it's so strange. Hey, come over here, Blackie. Go on. It's so weird. It's more South African. It's so strange.
You sound like he's African. Yeah, like
yeah.
The cartooniness of those final scenes does work beautifully against like the tone that is being set up before that point. Like everything up to that point is actually like quite realistic and quite intense, and it's very like it has a lot of like the bitter side of blaxploitation, which is like we are a people who have been thrown against suffering again and again and again, and it has all that kind of like that tension and that aggression, and then right at the end he shoots a woman so hard she flies out of a room like she's been pulled from behind. Like, woo!
That does exit stage left so rapidly. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
I think you're being quite generous there, Liam, describing the first half of Django Unchained as a good story telling the embittered struggle of African Americans. I think this is him at his worst exploitativeness, because like this came out in like 2012.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It came out in 20. We were woke. We knew that like this was the battle to happen was one that was fighting systemic injustice and reforming various organizations that were geared to exploit and oppress people, rather than shoot them all in the face.
Yeah, well, there's my thing, right? You can never trust Quentin Tarantino to have a nuanced take on something, especially when it comes to race relations. I do think he tried to get the aggression, like the anger and resentment of Black Americans across in this film. I just think it's Quentin Tarantino, so it sucked.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he was trying. It's terrible.
He's crap at it, but he tried his bloody best. Like Tom said, this film has its fucking problems. Like,
oh yeah,
a lot. I'd say the violence is at its most egregious here, where it is very, very entertaining, more so than Inglourious Basterds, which is heavy tension, building up to sharp shocks of extreme ultra-violence, which are cathartic in their brutality. And then Django Unchained is a relentless barrage of screaming and death. There is quite a lot of just wounded people screaming in the dirt, which is hilarious in the way that it's framed, scene by scene. For instance, the sheriff in the town, or the two slave owners at the beginning. You know, you're happy to see them suffer, but it's quite exhausting after 2.5 hours worth of all of that death. Don't get me wrong, it is a riot in, again, that party setting, like you were saying, Liam, where you and your buddies sitting down to watch a movie and you can talk over it or whatever, and you'll just like laugh at the good moments. I'd say Django is the best time out of all of them for that. But sitting down and watching Django again is a little bit tiring going through it all.
So the first time I watched it with you two when we were all quite drunk at uni. Back 40 years ago.
Different time.
There is that moment where Django shoots the woman and she goes whoop, and like we all stood up. Like it is the most like bombastic, like whoa!
We screamed. We couldn't believe our eyes. It was so amazing.
To be fair, it didn't take a lot to get us to scream at a film. If we were drunk, we would just be like, "This is awesome!"
We used to scream if we got toasty in Mortal Kombat. We would be like, "What was that?"
I still maintain Zardos is a good film.
We definitely need to do an essay on Zardos at some point.
Yes. Oh Lord. Yeah.
I will write a thesis on Zardos if I have to.
God, the minute when I remember screaming several times at Zardos when it reveals the Wizard of Oz thing, and we're like, "What does it mean? I don't know."
That's because it was the first bit in like an hour and a half. There was like a small explanation of what was going on. It was mad. That film is mad, and I've got the novelization of it as well, and it still doesn't shed any light on it. But Django Unchained, I think, is, as you say, all of the problems with it are absolutely valid. I think it is, obviously it's got its what's the word? It's problematic issues in terms of race relations, but also, as you say, I think also stylistically, a lot of the torture is dragged out to the point where it just loses its effect because it is being overused. I think the thing that makes me keep coming back to Django is the characters. I think, again, they're larger than life and they are so captivating that it's impossible to look away. Obviously, you've got Schultz, I think, is Christoph Waltz's character. He's very charismatic. Jamie Foxx as Django is almost, I feel like it's a bit derogatory to say he's like the blank slate of the film, but I think he's obviously the audience's perspective, that he's not the most bombastic, but we sort of see the world through his eyes. But then you've got Calvin Candy, Leonardo DiCaprio, in his first role as a villain, and boy, howdy does he do well as a villain. I'm
still confused and angry that Christoph Waltz, who was an incredible actor in this as well, got the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year, and Leonardo DiCaprio did not, and didn't even get nominated for that. I thought he absolutely stole the show for me. The movie really only picks up for me when we enter Calvin Candy enters the piece.
Candyland.
He turns his hand into like an exploded bar of taffy.
That was
grass, and like he's just got blood dripping down his hand, and that's not effect. He did that for
He smashed a glass, incorporated it into his performance by smearing blood on his co-star's face. Like,
he's like fucking king of ham. It's remarkable.
Insane.
His role in that film is astonishing.
Leonardo DiCaprio, it's hard for an actor to go against type. There are some people who, elsewhere in Tarantino's movies, who managed to do that quite well, like Brad Pitt, who can, shift to different roles quite easily. But Sam Jackson will always be a Sam Jackson character in every single movie that he's in. We need to talk about Steven later. Well, that was a cool performance there. But Leonardo DiCaprio, to go from being such a heartthrob, and by this time I don't even think he'd done anything like Wolf of Wall Street. Possibly the most grey character he'd played would be in The Departed. Even Frank Abagnale in Catch Me If You Can is still heroic to the core, and even if he's a criminal. And so to have him be someone so relentlessly evil and deliciously dark, that is quite an achievement to go against type so well. And not to have it be awkward and uncomfortable. You do find yourself quite liking Candy for all of his awfulness.
But his comeuppance when Schultz finally just shoots him, it's just like he does it knowing that he's about to get blown away himself, and just that little shrug of I couldn't resist, and you just feel so satisfied that he finally gets his comeuppance, and that he's not going to get what he's not going to get. He's not going to get his satisfaction, even though he was gonna. I mean, if they'd signed him, I think Broomhilda would have got away and everyone could have walked their separate ways, but it wouldn't have been as satisfying as seeing him just getting shot in the chest. So
and shooting up the whole place.
You can do what you like to slave owners. Like which I think Nazis pushed to its fucking extremes in this film. But like, because he wants to justify all of the violence that happens to the slave owners at the end of the film, so he spends a lot of time brutalizing black people, which we already know that slavery was bad, Quentin. You don't need to fucking enjoy it so much, guy.
You didn't need to set that up. You could have just said the punchline and we would have gotten the joke.
It's implied.
It's like The Last of Us Part 2. Spend 20 hours teaching us that violence is wrong. And it's like, we knew.
I need to beat a dog to death.
You didn't have to scream his name. No, bear. I felt bad enough already in the first one. Okay. You didn't need to press B repeately to wring his neck, which is essentially what you do midway through that game anyway.
Oh, it's too dark for me. Too dark for
me. You're not going there.
Game. I loved every second of it. I was fucking miserable the second I finished it.
Yeah.
I sat staring at the credits roll. It's like, that was a bad time.
Yeah.
I don't think I want any more of this. Yeah, it's you need to complete is what drives you on. But then once you're done, you're like, you only took away from me. You gave nothing back.
I need to play Katamari or something right now. Otherwise, I'm going to top myself.
100%. But no, Django Unchained, I will say one of the more... The only sort of performance with a kind of duality is an interest is like Steven as the head house slave, who is sort of revealed to actually be the mastermind running the whole affair. And I think it's an overlooked segment of the film, possibly because it's an uncomfortable one to confront, but the internal politics of power within the slave hierarchy and the influence that they could actually have is something that I think I overlook myself quite often, where it's that Stephen was the real overall villain promoting everything that goes along, and Calvin is an idiot who is being guided into smart financial decisions by Stephen. And who actually uncovers all of the lies and the plots and everything like that, when he could have just shut his mouth and let everything play out. But I feel like that's a very, very overlooked aspect, probably because of the ultraviolence and the fun. You want to think about the lady firing out of the room at the speed of sound, rather than...
watching slaves turn on one another through desperation and the cruelty that desperation forces. This isn't very fun, and I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
Just have him like shoot Walton Goggins a lot. Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
he's got such a shootable face. He's so good at being shot.
Love him. So great.
He's so good in things.
I think we should ready to rank it.
Yeah, I still thoroughly enjoy this film. It's definitely not on the same par as a lot of these others. I'm thinking maybe a high B, low A.
And that's fair.
I would put it a low A.
I'd
Low
probably
A?
say I'd say solid B, because I think a lot of the flaws aren't always like counteracted by the fact that there are some things that are fucking excellent in this film. So I'd probably say, yeah, all right, low A, high B, personally.
Well, I'll put it at the top of B for now, and we can always adjust later. But speaking of, westerns and the old tropes of the cowboy genre, let's look at 2015's The Hateful Eight, which takes it in a completely different direction compared to the bombastic nature of Django. This is a much more reserved and low key film in many respects. Drew, do you want to give us the rundown of The Hateful Eight?
Tarantino should make theater. Is the takeaway from The Hateful Eight. He is a theater artist at the end of the day, playing for the back row, sort of single set, power dynamics going. Yeah. Anyway, Hateful Eight is a bunch of colorful characters stuck in a blizzard at a haberdashery, a little sort of basically like a board and room type deal, and several of them are transporting a fugitive for a bounty, and many characters are not who they appear. And after one of them is murdered, they begin to try and. It's a whodunit story, essentially. One of them gets murdered while they're all in there, and they're going to sleuth out who the killer is and who can be trusted. And there's pretty much hijinks ensue from there.
Hijinks ensue. Yeah, because this actually started off. It was going to be a film, then he cancelled it, and then they did a table read, didn't they? A public table read, effectively, low-key theater, and the reception was so positive that he ended up making it anyway. Because, it is exactly that. It is cinematic theater, and for the most part, it works really, really well.
Absolutely, yeah.
It feels like the perfect response to Django Unchained in a lot of them, because it carries a lot of the same themes, especially with the racism and like the Abraham Lincoln letter, which you discover at the end of the film is a fake. It kind of touches upon a lot of the same ideas and stuff, but it takes it in a much more nuanced direction. There's a lot more patience with the characters, a lot more patience with the themes that he's trying to set up, and then bit by bit, but fucking laser precision, just knocks these themes down one by one. I think it's a cracking little film. I think would be a better play, but apples and oranges in it. Like
I'd be more forgiving of it with an interlude. It would seem old fashioned. That's my only problem with it, is I get a little exhausted by the end. But I would say I wouldn't have mind, especially not in such a guy who loves doing love letters to old cinema formats. I would have loved a brief interlude just after what's his face dies, spewing all the blood everywhere, and then you enter the whodunit act of the movie. I would have been fine if he'd have just thrown up on screen 10 minutes of go off and pee, grab yourself a drink and some more popcorn, and then I come back refreshed, ooh, who killed him now? In that way, I think he could have perfectly replicated theater, but for the screen. And I would have been fine with it.
A 10-minute B-reel of just some other Western, a really short Buster Scruggs-esque Western story to kind of link the two narratives together, not even thematically more so than anything, and then just go back. Actually, that might be the best way to watch this film. Watch the first half, wait for the initial death, turn it off, put on Ballad of Buster Scruggs, watch the first for that, turn it off the second Buster Scruggs dies, put this film on. Done.
That is a good. If anything, it's almost like just a spaghetti western version of the Grindhouse trailers. That'd be something like that would be great.
100%.
And also, it goes without saying the Samuel L. Jackson's character, whose name escapes me, makes someone suck his penis, which
Major Mark West
works again in the context of things. It works really well.
People I'm surprised. I was surprised to learn that people had polarizing opinions about that scene. I think I have never been more thrilled to see a camera pan down like that. Like, I was overjoyed. It was the last thing I expected in this film. It was not set up in any way that he was going to go in a massive monologue about sucking his dick, but it works on so many levels. Just the insane bullshit of it, the in-universe tactic of goading this guy into drawing on him so he can legally shoot him, as displaying the insane calculating cruelty of the Major. It works for his character. It works for the movie. The soundtrack by Ennio Morricone is godly, ascendant, and it's just hilarious. You can't believe what you're seeing. I think it's fantastic. But a lot of people were like, yeah, that was weird. That was uncomfortable.
Prudes.
Yeah.
It has this really wonderful Tarantino quality of it takes the 8 worst people that you've ever met and puts them in a room together and just lets them duke it out. Because none of these guys are good. There are protagonists of this film. None of them are decent people. They all have, even at their best, terrible edges. That really works for this kind of story. This story of like backbiting, needlessly mean people. Backbiting and being needlessly mean. Delightful. Absolutely stunning.
Gray on gray morality. Just no one. Yeah. There is no morality. It's just action.
Agreed. Agreed.
I love it. I think it's more like a kind of metatextual thing, but wasn't it crazy that there was a period of time in that kind of era where it looked like Westerns were going to have a comeback?
I know, right? Because there was like The Revenant that came out at that time, and there was a few other things.
They were remaking a whole bunch of the classics.
Yeah, True Grit remake.
I mean,
a couple years back, Logan, it felt like Western was going to come back for a minute there, and then Marvel films.
Yeah. Even our mutual friend of the show, Rob, became enamored by country and Western music for a hot minute.
Absolutely obsessed with it. It was a dark time for all of us.
It was a dark time for all of us. I still remember the song "Have You Forgotten" by Darren something. That sounds like a country name, which manages to rhyme the word "forgotten" with Bin Laden. So.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I'll show you that later.
Link me in the chat later. Thank you.
It's burnt into my DNA at this point.
Well, I mean, have you forgotten? Clearly not. Right, Hateful Eight. I think it's definitely A tier. I would probably say it's below Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill for me, though.
I'd put it above Kill Bill, lower than Reservoir Dogs personally.
Really?
But I wouldn't fight that to the death. I think that there's more in it in Hateful Eight than there is in Kill Bill. More to like. If you tabled out a list of like what is good for acting, dialogue, soundtrack, and visual style, storytelling, all that kind of stuff, I think there's more pluses for Hateful Eight in my book. Kill Bill relies very, very heavily on its action.
Liam, you're the deciding vote on this then.
I'm going to have to go with Drew on this. Yeah, I think it is marginally better than Kill Bill because Kill Bill is just action, whereas Hateful Eight has action and then just a shit ton of nuance on top of that, which elevates it quite dramatically for me. I want to say Reservoir Dogs, Hateful Eight, Kill Bill.
Fair enough. It was there. And then we move on to the final film, which will probably take up the next 3 hours of this.
This is where the knives come out.
Right. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from 2019 is a film where Tarantino very gracefully pulls down the trousers of the golden age of Hollywood, puts its erect penis facing right at the screen, and basically lets it shoot its load right over our faces. And frankly, I didn't like it.
You're not wrong. You're out of line, but you're not wrong.
This is a conversation that I think we've all had with Jim Appleman, the content creator. They make the case that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood perfectly encapsulates Quentin Tarantino's priorities, because while Django Unchained is exceptionally violent, the violence against the Manson family in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is so excessive. It kind of proves that Quentin Tarantino is more upset about the death of Hollywood than he was about slavery.
Which is entirely believable for his attitudes. I mean,
that was a long time ago. Don't worry about it. Anyway, isn't it such a shame that Sharon Tate died in this thing?
I mean, what career she could have had later on.
I mean, do you want to just go through what actually happens, Liam? Like, what happens in this film?
So, a long, long time ago, there was a place called Hollywood. And that's where all of the magical people live. The general conclusion is that an actor and his best friend and stunt double, played by Leonardo Dicaprio and Brad Pitt, respectively, kind of go on this sort of picaresque romp throughout Hollywood, trying to find new work, trying to like work their way out of a particularly low spot that they're currently in. Concurrently to this, it tells the tale of Sharon Tate's murder at the hands of Charles Manson and the Manson family. Now, I am actually not necessarily an expert on the Manson family, but I know an awful lot about them. And I got to say, this is the most accurate representation of the Mansons I've ever seen. Because they're all fucking idiots. They are all the dumbest people that you could possibly imagine. And I will give credit where it's due. That works perfectly. Sharon Tate feels like she, as a character, is done slightly dirty because she doesn't really get much to do in the actual film. But I will say, it is honestly, there's something quite sweet and quite endearing about Tarantino just thinking to himself, I just want to see Sharon Tate have a lovely day. She's been relegated to like the hall of tragedy in modern history. You know, she is the cut short before her time. What a terrible shame. And I'm like, it is a terrible shame. But there was so much to her. Like beyond that, she was a delightful little comedic actress who did delightful films. And it's nice that Tarantino wanted to just give her a nice day for a change. That is.
I was horrified the whole film because I thought it was going to Fruitvale Station it a little bit, where they weren't going to alter reality, and that we were watching Sharon Tate's lovely day only to be cut short ruthlessly and brutally, by her insane murder. And I can't tell you the relief. It's not enough to overshadow the horrendous violence that happens in that scene, but I can't tell you how relieved I was to see it not go down that way, because I was, it's quite a sleepy, pleasant film up until that point, and I just hate to be crushed like that at the end, but that seems to be its inevitable journey. And so
sleepy is the perfect adjective for it as well. There is a dreamy quality to all of Sharon Tate's scenes, played by like Margot Robbie at her most like delightful and radiant and pretty, and she's having fun, and she's like there's a scene of her watching the film in the cinema. I mean, it is by far the most egregious foot scene that Tarantino has ever put into a film. I'm going to put that out there now.
I would have said the one in the car.
Yeah, the car one definitely sprung to mind for me.
Yeah,
this is absolutely Tarantino airing out his kinks as if they are laundry.
Yeah, that is the problem with this film for me, is that it is just directorial masturbation.
It is indulgent to an outrageous degree. But there is that scene where she is watching herself on the screen, watching and that's what, again, I know quite a bit about Sharon Tate's career. She had commercial flop after commercial flop until that point, and that film that she was watching in that scene was her last big commercial break, and that was a success. And that was the moment where she switched over into being a comedy actress as opposed to a horror actress. And he actually does a really good job at reflecting the actual known and established joy she felt at watching that film, which I really liked. I did enjoy that. I wish he'd let her wear shoes for it,
but Tarantino's gonna Tarantino.
Yeah,
I did appreciate the Sharon Tate side of things. I will admit that wasn't what I was focusing on the whole movie. If anything, I felt like the first time, just because of where my attention was lying, the Sharon Tate segments felt somewhat tacked in, given how unrelated they were to the rest of the plot until the very, very end. And I found them ever so slightly tedious, not feeling so lamentable about the loss of Sharon Tate in cinema as a whole. Obviously a tragic death, but as opposed to sort of lamenting the what could have been impact on cinema she could have had, I'm less sentimental about that as others. And I reckon that a vast number of viewers of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood had no fucking clue who she was or what was going on there. At least several people that I went to go watch it with were like, what's that? And I felt the need to be like, oh no, in the real world she got murdered. That's why this is even great or sad.
The Sharon Tate ended the 60s. So anyway, here's Leonardo Dicaprio.
Leonardo DiCaprio learning to act and deal with his drinking problem. But that's where my focus was lying in equally indulgent, but was the indulgence of the film, the process of film production in excruciating detail, from take to retake, resetting, the downtime between filming and, getting into scuffles behind scenes on the set.
Oh, the Bruce Lee bit was actually fairly entertaining, if a bit.
Oof, controversial. People got mad about that.
Yeah, because it's a ridiculous fucking scene. It's just like Tarantino going like, I don't think Bruce Lee was that good at fighting. I'm going to make the guy who's power. It's like, all right, put your Power Rangers away. Like,
it's such a weird thing to highlight, isn't it? It's like you get the Sharon Tate thing. Why do you have to bring Bruce Lee into this? That could have been a very entertaining scene without.
Damian Lewis as Steve McQueen as well. It's just
that was beautiful.
How much of this film feels like a response to Hail Caesar? They feel like, because it's the same kind of era, and Hail Caesar is also this love letter to like the golden age of Hollywood. But whereas Hail Caesar is all about like the kind of the noir aspect of the golden age of Hollywood, so like the communists that were like slowly infiltrating Hollywood and like the desperate attempts to stamp that out. This very much feels like the pulp approach to it. They do actually work quite nicely together as back-to-back texts.
Yeah.
Where they approach the same thing at different angles. I don't necessarily know. I think Hail Caesar comes out better dramatically, but this is obviously we're looking at this context.
I've never seen Hail Caesar.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah,
it's just one of the best films.
Equally indulgent. Think for every minute in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that Brad Pitt was just driving, replace all of those minutes with extended song and dance sequences, and film sets of people just going through the motions of Channing Tatum in like a 6-minute sailor dance sequence, on and on and on. Replace every one of those indulgent minutes with an indulgent 1950s, 60s film scene. Basically, it's a riot.
That sounds like more fun than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because I do think this is him. Was it Inglourious Basterds that you say that he basically cracked the perfect balance between style and substance, and there's nothing too cringy, and it never gets dull at the same time. I think this is way too much style with not enough substance for me. It's just him being so gushy over Hollywood, and as you say, like what might have been had things been different. And I think perhaps I'm not the right audience. Perhaps he is writing it for himself. And, if that's the case, then all power to him. If this is the film he wanted to make, great. But I just don't think it has the same connection for me as any of his other films, bar maybe Death Proof.
It definitely lacks staying power in a way that all of the other films that he's made, possibly the exception of Death Wish, have. Like, you don't need that much context to go into Reservoir Dogs. You don't need any context to go into Reservoir Dogs. You need nothing but context to go in once upon a time.
You won't get why you're like, what is all the fuss about all of this if you don't really give a crap about that era of cinema?
Why is this guy in a leather jacket and long hair looking sketchy in the background, then never appears again in the entire movie? If you didn't know who that was, then that would be like the most irrelevant scene.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, Polanski as a character, as like everyone's like, oh, he's like weird and kind of freaky, and like, yes, because we all know he's a nonce, but like that's not in the text. Like, that's
he doesn't get a line because we already know all of the stories about Roman Polanski.
Yeah, it's and like there are definite moments where it does hit a real emotional beat that like actually does stick without any context. Like DiCaprio's character being told that he's actually a very good actor by a little girl who's a much better actor than he is, and like
that's beautiful.
That's a moment, and like that's really, and that also feels like how we were talking earlier about Leonardo DiCaprio deserved an Oscar for his role in Django. That character doing like that level of hamming definitely feels like a response to that controversy back there. But, like it is an indulgent film that relies a lot of like homework essentially to really.
If you take it in its elements that don't require backstory and context, where you just have Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio going about their day and Sharon Tate about their day. It's fine for those scenes in and of themselves because they are performed exceptionally well. Like, they are fantastic actors to a single one of them. Even when they go onto the farm and you've got good old Dakota Fanning as creepy wife of what's her face, and everybody plays their part perfectly. And like you say, there are some moments that do feel so genuine in the way that they hit, and then moments that are just surprisingly quietly funny. I really, really love the way that Brad Pitt's up on the roof with his, oh my god, his abs. Oh, sorry, I just need to like take a second there. My goodness, there was gasps in the theater when he took off his shirt. Like, oh, sweet Jesus. Sorry.
I was with a friend and I almost grabbed his knee. Like,
a box of popcorn burst open with the on my
mother of pearl. Yeah,
that was insane. Okay, anyway, but past that, I forgot where I was because he sat there on the roof thinking, why did they get fired? Why don't they want me back for the thing? And he flashes back to a time where he overheard a conversation with Leonardo DiCaprio, who then flashes back within that again to killing his wife, and then flashes forward within the flashback to fighting Bruce Lee, and then throws him into the car, and then they kick him off the set, and then comes back to the present. He's on the roof, and he just goes, "Oh yeah, fair enough." That's fantastic to me.
Brad Pitt puts in an excellent comedic performance in this film. Like,
yeah,
he has this understated, like, confidence and charm that really sells even the fact that he definitely killed his wife.
Yeah, he plays that guy from that era. You know, those kind of like smirking, somewhat sardonic, little bit of an edge to them. You know, Sean Connery or
the peak machismo era. Like, these are hyper macho guys,
fascist strongmen, just punching their way through.
Yeah, the character is a beautiful foil to him because he's the softest shit. Like, he is such a soft, sweet, gentle little loser, and like, he's a delight for that. Like, he really
don't cry in front of the Mexicans. Come on, use that line in.
Like, just such a bizarre choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all indulgent Tarantino, and the things that aren't Tarantino, good actors being good, are kind of what carry the film. It does, technically it is excellent, sure. I will say that it's curiously absent of soundtrack for a Tarantino film. Do you know what I mean?
Particularly one of the period that it's portraying as well. Like, you have got a ripe backlog of stuff that they could have pulled from.
Yeah, there's pretty much like the one. Oh god, I can't even remember the bloody song. That's how much it's stuck. Get out my life, why don't you, babe? Ooh. That one.
Was that at the party? Is that at the party that they're at?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's the only like heavily soundtrack bit that I remember being like, oh yeah, no, that sets the tone really, really well. Yeah.
And I was surprised by that because he loves his diegetic music playing off of radios while people go around. And the extended sequences of Brad Pitt driving around, nothing really stood out to me as, oh, music. This is a time, you know, in his effort to perfectly recreate the time period. I think one of the things he left out was iconic music, but it's odd. I don't know what to make of it.
It might have been a bit on the nose, but I wish they would have included "Look at Your Game Girl" by Charles Manson on the soundtrack.
I was going to say Helter Skelter.
No, I mean, either or.
If he'd have played Helter Skelter in the final scene where he's killing all of them.
Yeah. Speaking of the end, how did you feel about the end? Because obviously it is very shocking, like the level of violence I think we've established is probably, you know, it's him cathartically beating up the people who ruined Hollywood for him. But do you think it was excessive? Do you think it was too much of a jarring ending? What did you think?
Well, so I think one thing that it feels weird to say Quentin Tarantino has a thing against women, because obviously he does. Look at all of his films. He is weird about the way he writes women. Like, even if we're being extremely fucking charitable and saying that, like, he's not sexist, he still is weird in the way he writes women. he is sexist. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
Misogynistic would be more of the word. He wants to hurt people. I don't think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is worse than Hateful Eight, though, in terms of just the relentless beating of a woman for a long stretch of time before almost erotically hanging her at the end. Just
yeah. Wow. I think that is actually something we should probably go back and like.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah.
Talking about this the other week. There's a scene in Inglourious Bastards where a woman is getting choked out, and those are Tarantino's hands because he thought that the performance was realistic enough. And like, that's just Tarantino airing out his kinks. He just wants to brutalize a woman. That's a thing that he enjoys. And like, he's a fucking awful person in a lot of ways.
And finally, 1 hour and 50 minutes into this recording, he's just like, Tarantino's a guy. Oh my god,
bad dude. He's a really bad guy. And I do think his misogyny is really reflected against Squeaky Fromm and Sadie in The Mansons. Like, this hyper violence against these women is outlandish even for his standards in a lot of ways. I do agree there are other scenes in other Tarantino films, but like, just because he keeps hitting women doesn't mean that it's better when he hits them less. You know what I mean? Like, same is true with John Lennon, but that's not the point.
And it's a totally different tone to when the men get into fights with each other or start killing or something like that. I mean, but it helps that half of them were Nazis or slave owners, and so you feel no compunction whatsoever about the way he's killing them or hurting them or any kind of way. But the level that it escalates when it's just random criminal women is the bit where he smashes her face into the mantle. That I think was the step too far. I mean, the flamethrower is hilarious and all that, but the relentless screaming and just the bleh and the dog bite and everything, that was uncomfortable to watch. Like, you cringe back a little bit from the screen when that happens.
It is grotesquerie. It is true and utter Renaissance era grotesquerie. It is,
and he loved it. He thought that was appropriate and justified. Like, and he thought they'll love this because they miss Sharon Tate as much as I do. And that's pretty much that.
Like, guy, no one misses Sharon Tate this much. Not even Polanski misses her this much.
I mean, Polanski, I don't think he ever really was that into it. I think he had priorities that were beyond what us rational people would ever consider. But the thing is, I love on-screen violence. I'm not a violent person in real life, but on-screen violence is great. I love gory horror films. Heck, I even like, if it's done well, even like torture porn stuff can be good. However, it's all about the context, and I think the thing is that it just doesn't work in the context of this film. As you say, it just feels like him literally screaming into the void that they've ruined his favorite thing, and this is the way that he wants to rectify it. And for that, it didn't sit well with me. And the fact that that is it, then that happens and the film is over like 10 minutes later as well.
And just like it's such, like, I mean, Drew said it himself earlier, it's a sleepy film right up until that point where it's like this is a nice time, we're just enjoying it. It's this like picaresque adventure. We're just going around bouncing from one plot point to another, and we're just having fun with it. And now we're going to beat a woman to death for 20 minutes.
Yeah. And then the film, if you're sleepy and then you're violently shaken awake by the sounds of gunshots and screaming, and you're like, "What's going on? I don't know. How do I feel about all of this?" And,
it goes from sleepy to sleep paralysis. Very good.
That's a good way of describing it.
It's not a nice tonal shift at all.
I think it robs a bit of the ending. Could have been the final ending where Leonardo Dicaprio goes and hangs out with Sharon Tate, and finally makes it into Hollywood, and that moment is robbed a little bit of, could have been the crowning moment, like the moment where the little girl tells him he's a good actor. That was the best acting she's seen. That could have been sort of the like almost a tearjerker of a moment for a character's journey to go through, just to see him like achieve that, rags to riches kind of thing. But it's robbed of that because you're kind of still a little bit queasy after seeing the person's face just get mushed up. It robs a lot of the emotional heft. Agreed.
Well, we should probably think of somewhere to put it in the tier list. Obviously, I'm less forgiving of this film than you two are, so I would actually put this maybe on par with Death Proof in Tarantino, but I feel like maybe you think that could be a bit harsh.
For all that I criticized it, which are very, very, I don't argue, they're very valid criticisms, I still love it quite a lot.
I remember coming out of the cinema feeling extremely conflicted by it. There are definitely parts that I loved, and there are definitely parts I was like, ugh. So like, I think it's got to be above a Tarantino for me personally.
I'd put it above Kill Bill 2 for sure.
Wow.
Really? I think so. I'd put it above Kill Bill 2.
I'm gonna put you somewhere in a minute.
I'm gonna fucking squeak you from your ass.
You're gonna Manson me. No.
You're gonna Manson me? The fucking cheek of that.
And he had the goal to Manson me. Never do a Manson. You can't do a Manson.
Sorry, Drew. Life can be a cruel mystery.
I shifted to like a Seinfeld where it's like, you're never gonna do a Manson. Don't do a Manson.
You have a Manson on the first date, Jerry.
You have a Manson on the first date. Oh,
anyway,
I would put it below Kill Bill 2, personally.
That's the second lowest of the lowest would be higher than Death Proof, which is in D, I think.
Yeah, that's a Tarantino, isn't it?
Yep.
I don't know. At the very least, it's on par with Kill Bill 2. Stop looking so smart, Tom.
He's raging inside. Are you going to make your own Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where you're vindicated by murdering me and Liam by being like, stop praising this film?
Yeah.
Join the Manson family, and Tom is the only one who can stop us from killing, I don't know, Ryan Gosling or something. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, with the way my hair's going, I could quite easily play Charlie Manson at some point. So
maybe that'll be a really intense Halloween costume coming up. Yeah.
Honestly, the only reason I haven't grown my hair out is because I do look a bit like Charles Manson with long hair. It's not a good look. Like, honestly, man, you put a swastika on my forehead. I could quite happily run a cult in the desert. Like, yeah.
There are so many sound bites purely from you, Liam, that I am going to use as leverage over you should we ever need it. Truly
cursed recording that we've got here. The things you've said taken out of context, or even in context, they're still
it's too much for a Sunday lunchtime, that's for sure.
I'm quite happy that I will never look like Charles Manson. Well, I could with effort. I could Michael Jackson myself to look like Charles Manson, but I'm in no immediate danger of being. Oh,
can you imagine a cross between Charles Manson and Michael Jackson? That'd be the most threatening thing I can imagine.
That's Slender Man. That's like Slender Man in my brain right now. Charles Manson plus Michael Jackson is Slender Man.
Look at your game go! Ow!
You guys are just ignorant. Terrible. I've got to say, my dog did not enjoy that.
He doesn't like Nazi cult members or paedophilic pop stars. Allegedly, in theory.
My dog is my agent. He's just sat there like, we're never going to work again.
So
anyway,
the lowest possible B. Can we agree on that one?
I can tolerate that. Yes, I can tolerate that. And that is the last one we have to put in the list. So I will read out the list as it stands at the moment, and we can jingle jangle things about if we think we've changed our mind. So starting at the bottom, we have Tarantino, and in there we have Death Proof. C, not a sausage, nothing in C. Bottom of B, we have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Kill Bill Part 2, Jackie Brown and Django Unchained. A, we have Kill Bill Part 1, The Hateful Eight and Reservoir Dogs, and at the top with we have Inglourious Bastards, and right at the top, Pulp Fiction. How are we feeling about this list? Is there anything you would like to change around, or are you pretty content with the way things are?
I think that all works perfectly. I'm going to make a quick point now. This is like a quick epilogue to the entire episode. I've just gone on Quentin Tarantino's IMDb page, and he has 2 upcoming projects for 2022. One for 2022 and one as yet to be announced.
Mm-hmm.
First, Kill Bill Volume 3.
Mm-hmm.
Characters have been announced and no date or anything. So that's exciting. Don't know where that's going to go. The next one is the most baffling combination of words I've ever seen.
I remember this. Yeah.
A comic called Django/Zorro.
Okay.
I love it.
So
If they don't bring back Antonio Banderas, then I'm not interested.
like,
Yeah.
I'm back. I mean, obviously, like Django/Zorro is going to be oh yeah tier, obviously.
I just think the Kill Bill set would be very awkward nowadays. No, they've got history. There's weird shit that happened in the past because between Weinstein and the car crash and all of that, I don't really know how contemporary Uma Thurman feels about Quentin Tarantino or anything like that, because they've basically cleared Tarantino from like any involvement, particularly in Weinstein stuff, like of maybe aware but not an ally per se. But then there's like just the terrible way he acted on set with on Kill Bill, basically giving Uma Thurman a lifetime of pain. Like, I think that would be a weird set to be on. No,
I mean, she must have signed on for it to be, in pre-production at least. So
sure, yeah. That just seems so strange to me. Like, hey, you remember that time when you nearly paralyzed me? Oh God, buddy. How have you been? Yeah.
So here's one thing I think we can all agree on. Tarantino himself belongs in the Tarantino column.
Oh, yeah. If anything, I'm going to make an F tier below Tarantino for him to go in. A little, amendment to not amendment, but, a little appendix to the epilogue. Are you aware of the British irreverent panel show Shooting Stars?
Of course.
I'm not.
One of the team captains was I think she was Swedish, Anglo-Swedish or something, called Eureka Johnson. I used to get her confused with Uma Thurman so much because they both had a U sound at the start of their name, and they were both blonde, Scandinavian-esque looking women. And to this day, I still sometimes think of Uma Thurman as the panelist on Shooting Stars. So
until you pointed out that similarity, now I can't stop thinking of Uwe Boll either.
Oh, we'll get to Uwe Boll in due time on this channel.
Uwe Thurman Boll.
And also Uma Thurman's daughters in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What's her first name? Something Hawke. Robin Hawke?
What really?
Yeah, Uma Thurman's daughter is Maya Hawke.
Maya Hawke, that's it.
Who's she?
She's one of the Manson family people.
She is... Give a sec. This is very fun, watching Liam Google.
On the screen.
Bear with us.
If you made it through this far through the video, you can hold on for another 30 seconds.
God, I totally forgot about Al Pacino in this fucking film.
Flower. The character's name is Flower Child.
There I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, because her dad's Ethan Hawke.
Oh, I remember her now. Yeah, fair enough. Isn't she what's her face in Stranger Things?
I think, is she called Robin in Stranger Things? Is that where I'm getting confused?
Robin, that's it. Robin.
Yeah. Yeah, because she is the exact sort of midway point between Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke. She has such, they both have very strong genes and they both come through in her. But yeah, I mean, going back to Tarantino.
My brain goes, she's Uber Thurman. Anyway, sorry.
Uber Thurman.
Uber Thurman. I don't know why I find that so funny.
She just goes Super Saiyan. It's just like, ah!
I thought she just started a rideshare company. Anyway, I think we can agree that, broadly speaking, Tarantino's movies are better than they are poor. There is a heavy weighting in this tier list to the top, which is always good to see. And I am looking forward to seeing if he gets back on his bullshit with the later stuff, because I'm sure he will. As you say, he is the most auteur of the auteurs, and he's just going to do his thing. And no one, if people try and stop him, he'll probably just stop making movies. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. It's been a blast running through these cool films. I'm definitely going to rewatch a couple of them after this.
Yeah. Jackie Brown, please go back and rewatch it.
That will be number one.
If you don't, you're a goddamn racist.
You heard it here first, everyone. You got to watch it.
Argue with me, you're more of a racist.
You can only play that card once per tier list. You can't do it all the time.
Waited until the crowning moment.
but anyway, for anyone watching at home, thank you very much for sticking with us for the past couple of hours. And if there's any filmographies you would like us to feature next, or whether it be an actors or directors, whatever you like, leave them in the comments and we will consider them. We can't promise anything because it might be Uwe Boll, but we will definitely consider them. And stick around the channel for all manner of music related stuff coming very, very soon from your boys here at UDS Films. Without further ado, before my mouth stops working, my name's been Tom.
We can't do the outro. Tom's dying.
So, someone to pick up the slack, quick.
My God, breathe. I've been Drew.
I've been Liam. Thank you guys so much for watching and joining us today.
Before watching any Tarantino films, watch Escape from New York first.